Hi, I'm Chris Herring, and I'm on the board of the Surprise Regional Chamber of Commerce, representing the Government Relations Committee. And today, I'm sitting down with State Senator Rick Gray. Well, Rick, gearing up for another session, and last year was actually our first year kind of making a pivot from the Surprise Regional Chamber to focusing on advocacy. And so that means a lot more diving into policies that can make your eyes roll back and back in your head, I think, sometimes. But we got our scorecard here, and you actually were one of only 4 West Valley legislators that scored 100%. And so these 19 issues that we focused on 2019, you were in alignment with our priorities, and these range from nuclear power management to how you rent a house. So kind of across the board. So we want to sit down with you, talk about 2020 and what it looks like in the legislature, what it looks like maybe at the ballot in November with some initiatives that might come down. Our priority as a chamber is really to improve the community. Economic development is big, meaning can we grow jobs, can we grow wages, can we make the West Valley a better place to live? And then, one of our specific priorities right now is obviously transportation. As the West Valley grows, we need new transportation corridors. And so how those look and how that gets developed is going to really shape this part of the valley for a long time. So interested, what are your priorities looking at 2020 legislative session?
Well, I think, fortunately, we've had a priority on economic development as well as transportation. That's one of the things I think is good about the chamber is that seems to be a lot of their focus. That has basically ripple effects of benefits throughout the community. And as you know, the chamber focuses on the business community, but they know that impacts everybody. And so I think with what we've done so far, which has been encouraging economic development, economic growth, we've seen more people get better jobs, we've seen more businesses move in. That has basically been a very, very positive step for the state. And again, a lot of that has been because of the efforts of the chamber supporting certain issues. And fortunately, it's easy to get behind those bills and those issues that are going to be beneficial for all Arizonans.
Yeah. So we've got the possibility of $1 billion surplus in the budget, and so that leads to 1 billion different opinions on what to do with every one of those dollars. Anything, in terms of how you're looking at that? How do you balance what to spend and maybe, what not to spend?
Yeah, I think sometimes it is more challenging to have a lot of money than to not have much. But yeah, one of the things that's nice, and you've mentioned transportation, is we actually have money to put in transportation. There's a lot of transportation issues that need to be addressed. And so we're actually looking at several different areas where we can basically take care of some of our infrastructure. What the average person may not realize is when you've got a good transportation system, it helps to reduce the cost of all the goods and services that they buy. So there's unintended consequences of that. And I think, too, some of the impact that people don't understand, too, is when we are actually, in essence, putting in new roads and increasing bridges or whatever, that also drives jobs, and that also brings in revenue to the state. So we get a kind of a multi-positive effect that the average person may not see right off the top, but it's there. So more revenue to the state, better pricing on products because transportation can get their products to the locations at a quicker, cheaper way, and so it has ripple benefits.
So we got the election coming up in November, and part of that, oftentimes we get initiatives that come onto the ballot, things that you don't necessarily have a say in because it doesn't come through the legislature. And in the past, we've got a handful of those. It's possible that marijuana legalization comes back up again, and then it looks like there could be some big lobbyist money coming out of California to try and tell us how to run our healthcare industry here in Arizona. Yeah, I find it interesting. We're one of the top destination states in the country. We're growing faster than almost any other state. California's shrinking almost faster than any other state. And so it's interesting that they want to, tell us how our people should get health care. But any thoughts on anything coming to the ballot in November?
Yeah, I think, and those are things that I'm glad the Chamber is involved in and looking at. Unfortunately, when you have a ballot initiative, so many people don't understand that if they support that, the chance of actually, if there's a problem, correcting it is extremely problematic and actually requires going to the ballot again. I'll give you one example. We passed medical marijuana. There have been issues that have come up with the toxicity in that marijuana. And so at the legislature, we've tried to address that to say we need to look at this and make sure there are no carcinogens in it. But we can't get a 2/3 vote. And so we've got issues that it's supposed to be medically good for people, but it's actually has some negative impacts. Another issue that we came up with is you go to a restaurant and you can feel a certain level of safety because those restaurants are basically checked by the health department. The health department has the ability to drop in at a restaurant at any time. Anytime they're open, they can drop in unannounced, and they go through and they check. And most people have seen in the paper or on the online reports of restaurants that have gotten negative scores. Some of them, they're just not healthy to eat at. I would think you'd want to know. I want to know that maybe I won't go there. When it comes to inspections on marijuana dispensaries, even ones with kitchens, the way that law was written, which was written for them, by them, is that they have to get approval. So if the Department of Health wants to come in and check their kitchens, they have to pick the time and the day specifically. They can't just drop in. Well, interestingly, when they've done that, they've gone there and every single time there's been nobody in that dispensary except for the owner or a representative. The kitchens are shut down. There's no way to really check to see if they are basically protecting the health of their clients. And so that's a concern. We can't change that. The impact of recreational marijuana, to me, if you do study and research, which I encourage everybody, if you don't have the information, don't just listen to talking points, do some research. Alec Berenson has got an interesting book out called Tell Your Children that he goes into the impact. There's some very concerning issues with recreational marijuana. And again, all you have to do is also look at Colorado. They did a report on what their findings were, the result of their recreational marijuana, and it's been very harmful. We've seen accident rates go up. We've seen health issues come up where more people were going to the hospital. Over and over, people need to look at the facts before they vote because basically elections have consequences. They can either be good or bad. And you brought up the healthcare issue. We do have a union issue coming up. Now they call it surprise billing. Arizona has already addressed surprise billing in the legislature. And we've taken care of that to protect people. But they use that term, but really what it is unionizing of hospitals. If that happens, and I've talked with the hospital people, it's going to have a huge economic impact, which will drive up cost of health care. It's not going to be beneficial. We will have, hospitals are extremely concerned about that because where they're at right now will be, again, grossly impacted economically. It will have a negative impact for all those people. And we've got people coming to Arizona because of the quality of our health care.
Yeah. And from California. Yeah, they'll leave California to get better health care here. Yeah, I'm sure that would terrify them to know. And you're right. I heard last week one of our state agency directors talk about the medical marijuana issue or the recreational marijuana issue and say, they were for it. And then they watched Colorado over several years and now they're totally against it. And so a good example of watching and seeing what happens and not making the same mistakes. And you're totally right on the ballot initiatives. I'm not sure, everyone in the public realizes when something comes from an initiative and it goes to the voters, the legislature can't fix it. Even if there's glaring problems, it becomes very, very difficult to change anything. And It costs millions of dollars to put it back on the ballot again. So, letting people that don't understand Arizona write initiatives is a very dangerous way to run your state.
Extremely dangerous. And we've been attacked as trying to disenfranchise voters when we're waving flags about initiatives. But I'll give you a good example. My predecessor, then Senator Debbie Lesko, who's now in Congress, ran the surprise billing bill, and that passed. Interestingly, when I was appointed to take her place, when I went in, we had some of the people that were involved with that came to me because going through that, there were just some little tweaks that needed to be made with the process to perfect it, and that usually happens. We rarely ever get anything perfectly right the first time. I mean, perfect is just a hard thing to define or expect when you're dealing with people. But we ended up doing an amendment, and I offered that amendment to correct that, just to tweak it. Anything that goes through the legislature, the next session we can tweak, we can refine. We've done that with Airbnb. We passed that. Now there's been some tweaking because there's been problems. We can do that at the legislature if it goes through the legislature. If it goes through the ballot initiative, you're absolutely right. We cannot tweak that. That's the challenge. Every citizen, I would hope, would raise that bar up hugely high to say, if I'm going to support this, I need to thoroughly research this language and make sure that it's perfect, because we won't be able to change it.
We have a good idea of what's coming in 2020. We're hoping for a short session. Less damage done when the session is short. So anything else you want to add here into what we should be looking at?
I would just say, one, being in the legislature, it's always a plus to be involved with our chambers, because that's when we're hearing what the business community is facing. And for the average person who is not a business owner, the benefit for them is when businesses can run cheaper, they can afford to hire more people. They can afford to increase their wages. All of those things come back to benefit us as taxpayers, because when businesses prosper, we see our revenues for the state go up without raising taxes. And so the business community in our state has a huge beneficial impact on every resident. It's not just their employer. It has huge beneficial impact on every resident in Arizona. And so it's been a pleasure working with the chambers and hearing from them, making sure we're seeing what are beneficial policies and what are not from their side, and as well as listening to residents and listening to their concerns as we work together in cooperation. I think we're making our state a better environment for all of our residents. And I think, again, over the last few years, you can see where our revenues have gone up, where the jobs have come in, businesses are moving here. It's because of that cooperation and that work that we've done. It is really making a very healthy state and a healthy place for people to move here, raise their families, and retire.
Well, we appreciate your work in the legislature, and we look forward to working with you and the other West Valley legislators to make the West Valley healthy and growing, and keep Arizona healthy and growing.
Thanks, Chris.